lies, relapses, late night calls, therapist detox, emotional brawls. I've lived through chaos, tears, and gaslighting, blame, and now I've turned it into a podcast game.
So today, on Not My Baggage, we are talking to somebody who is incredibly important and special in my life. I don't think I'd be where I am today if it wasn't for this woman. I introduce you to Dr. Audrey Freshman, who is what would you say your exact title is, Dr. Audrey?
I'm a clinical doctorate in social work. I specialize in trauma, family therapy, and addiction.
And we came to you, my husband and I came to you. I laugh about this when I talk about it now. We came to you as a couples therapist. And I always say that I was looking to pay a therapy bill so that a therapist could tell my partner that he was wrong and I was right. I wanted a soldier in my team. And that you ended up becoming my therapist and giving me, incredible tools that have gotten me to where I am today. Which is not necessarily where everybody else is. So because I knew that our time was so important, I wrote down a bunch of questions, and we can kind of go from there. We may not get to them all, but I think that what you have to say is incredibly important. Today, we're talking about, I think, what the real cost is of loving an addict, what that means emotionally and spiritually and mentally. And I guess from your perspective, what's the number one myth that people believe about loving an addict?
That's a very complicated question to synthesize into one answer, but I would say that it probably is the ability to split the person off into two parts so that you start to perceive them as the loving self who would otherwise be loving but for the addiction, which actually is facilitated by some of the treatment, right? It's an illness, so therefore, it doesn't we have to be compassionate towards the illness. And so it sort of becomes bifurcated in a way. And, they're really a loving person. And so therefore I should tolerate this part of them because it doesn't count because they don't really mean it. So therefore I stay really in a split position with them rather than saying, well, no, my whole life is a composite of both sides of the story.
So we excuse the behavior, behavior that we normally wouldn't excuse because we're sort of programmed to believe that this is an addiction and this is a disease. And so as the partners or the family members, we're kind of in this no-win. I felt like I was in a no-win situation of, I'm supposed to be loving and compassionate and understanding. And yet there's all this behavior that I wouldn't tolerate from anybody else.
Right, because it's in sickness and in health. And so that definition gets stretched into a place that becomes really untenable for you as the person who loves the addict. But, so you start to do it at the expense of self is really what happens, because you're so invested in trying to fix this to make it like one lens, like it's going to finally fit into, they're really going to be okay. And it's going to be okay if I could just make it okay. If I could just do that.
How do those of us who are going through this, what sort of is the light bulb moment that you think we should find that we realize that, for me at least, I tried everything, right? I mean, I bought the airline tickets and the cars and the vacations and supported the businesses and did all of this and thought I was going to be able to change my partner. And, I had my own light bulb moment. And it was through working with you and through, my own experiences. But what do you think, or how do you think we let me start that question again. What takes us so long sometimes to get to that place of realizing that we can try everything under the sun and realizing that we have no control or ability to change this other person?
Well, I think like what you said in the very beginning about wanting me to hire me to tell him he was wrong. And, the focus really is on fix. In this case, it's a him, fix, fix. And then you call treatment programs and they say, well, we can't fix him unless he wants to be fixed. So then it's like, well, I got to find the program that's going to fix him in spite of the fact he doesn't want to be fixed. I think the moment comes really with, well, which is where I started with you. Well, what about you? where are you in this storyline? How do we work on fixing the self in a way to say, I'm no longer going to tolerate this, or I can't tolerate this, or I count.
I guess so many of us abandon ourselves, right? We kind of forget about ourselves. And I mean, from the people you've seen, I mean, how is that sort of a line that runs through, whether it's a family member, whether it's a loved one? I mean, we kind of all seem to abandon ourselves. I mean, truly, like for me at least, it didn't matter at what expense, emotionally, physically, spiritually, if I could save this person, if I could change this person, if I could not abandon this person, then I would either be the hero, they'd never leave me, I would have accomplished what nobody else had accomplished before me.
Yeah. And also, if they leave me, are they going to find somebody else? I think was a theme too.
Right.
Who's
going to be the first person they meet is going to change them.
Right. Which I have a client right now who, the marriage was dreadful and he left her on top of it all, in spite of all of the stuff she did through 2 bankruptcies and the whole 9 yards of the 9 yards. And he has the nerve to leave her on top of it and find somebody else, which is blowing her mind. Okay. That, this could possibly happen. So I think that, it's almost like cognitive dissonance. The more investment you put in the product, the more you just want to hang on to this product. And I keep saying to her in this moment, because she's in the finance world, pretend it was a bad stock. And you just bought a bad stock. Can you accept that you don't need to hang on to the stock anymore? Can you just get rid of it and be okay with it and take your loss? But that's really a hard thing to do, right? Is take the loss.
It's
which
huge.
Actually is the win.
Which you're right, it is the win, right? But it really does feel like the loss.
You feel like it's the loss, but it's the win for yourself.
How many people do you think, I mean, I know that in my work with you, I had to figure out that I had to be pretty broken before I got into this relationship to have accepted the behavior that I accepted, right? And it took a long time for me to realize that I was looking for something to make me feel whole or okay or secure, and fixing this other person was going to do that for me. Do you find that a lot of people come to you and realize that even before they got into this relationship that they were broken before? Because like I always say that a healthy person, if they met somebody who was going through addiction, would be like, bye, see you later. It's been nice. Thanks for the first date. I'm out of here. And only somebody who's unhealthy, like I was, would be like, let me drag you out from under the table that you're hiding under because I found you and you're the sickest one in the room. So let me find the sickest one and I'm going to fix you.
Right. I see it as more insidious than that, though. First of all, I guess we're all quote unquote broken in some ways because nobody has ever met all of our needs,
Right.
ever. And there's an argument to be made that if mommy was the perfect mommy and met all of our needs all the time, we just become unbelievably narcissistic anyway, because we expect the rest of the world to meet our needs. So anyway, it's not possible. I mean, I'm hungry. My mother has to go to the bathroom. I'm disappointed. I have to deal with it. Okay. So I have to learn to deal with disappointment in relationships. Whatever that particular family dynamic is for me versus you, wherever the hurt or missing pieces are, it's like the Shel Silverstein book, I'm looking for my missing piece. So right. I find my missing piece in this person. And, most people don't really know, I mean, unless you come from a home where addiction is prevalent, in which case, wow, what a great fit. I'm used to this. But if you're not used to this, then, it doesn't seem like the whole 9 yards of what addiction really is. It feels like, somebody has the flu and I'll take care of them and I'll make them chicken soup and maybe I'll even take off and take care of them. And before you know it, it's like they're bilking you on that taking care of, and you're stuck in it, so it comes upon you, and then it brings out, all of those old childhood tapes that, of course, like you point out, have to be reworked to say, why am I staying in this? And I'm not going to get my needs met by taking care of mommy so she could take care of me, so to speak, in the example I just gave. If I could just fix mommy because she had a stomach ache and wasn't there for me, then she'll be my mommy again.
So it really is insidious. Can you explain what trauma bonding is in plain English? Because you hear that with those words thrown around a lot, especially in relationships with addiction, right?
That's right.
Right. So
Well,
I just kind of wanted to clarify, like, what does trauma bonding mean?
I don't know, but but I think of it as the contemporary way of saying Stockholm syndrome. I think of it as saying, what's the worst thing an abuser can do for you? And there's a poster of that. And what's the worst thing an abuser can do? And they show a bouquet of flowers. And that always struck me as so unbelievably true that, you get almost addicted to people think that you're addicted to the trauma, but it's really, going down that rabbit hole of, again, finding the spaces in between the trauma where it's so good. And so then, extrapolating that this is all going to be good. And so you get addicted to the drama of it.
And the cycle.
But I want to say that, all of these terms like trauma bonding or codependency or, enabler or whatever these things have been used, traditionally to label. And, a lot of times it's women who are, on the other end of this addiction cycle, though I do treat substantial amounts of men too. They get stuck in a lot of times for different reasons, oftentimes because, there's a caretaking element to the kids and that sort of thing. But having said that, it becomes like a negative thing to say about women on some level, because we are, sort of trained up to be the caretakers and, to stick, stand by my man. And so then you have these terms like, oh, you're in it for the trauma bond, you're an enabler, you're a codependent, so something's wrong with me. So even like, as you say, so I'm broken. We have to be careful about that language, like how much we pathologize ourselves in terms of how we got into this and how do we get kind about ourselves to get ourselves out of it, If that
Why
makes
do you think, and I go back to myself, why do you think that being in a situation with an addict that you find yourself you create a boundary, right? Or you think you do. Why is it so easy for us to move that boundary?
Yeah.
It's like, and before you know it, it's like you're accepting things that you never in your life would have accepted. How does that happen?
Right. Well, again, incrementally, is how it happens. So, but in the example of, let's say, a mother and a kid, for example, who I go into my kid's room and I see a joint and I say, what's this? So he says to me, it's not mine, it's my friend's. So there starts the lie, right? So now I'm faced with a choice to say, well, if I believe him, then I don't have a problem because my kid doesn't have a problem, right?
Right.
On the other hand, if I don't believe him, then he does have a problem, then I have to do something about it. So I'm stuck myself about this. So I do some combination of, okay, this time I'll let you get away with conning me. And you see, I'll call you the liar, but I won't look at the fact that I'm allowing you to lie to me.
To lie to me.
Serving purpose. Okay. But okay. I'm going to allow you to, and I this is happening in quick time. Okay. This time I mean it. If I find it again, then you are going to be punished. And then let's say the punishment is something like you're not going to go out for a month. Okay. Now I'm a single parent and I am responsible for driving him everywhere, something like that. So the very thing I'm saying is an untenable thing for me to sustain. So that's number one. So now I go into his room 2 weeks later. Now I'm hyper vigilant, by the way. So now I'm not only going into his room to clean up, I'm going into his room and I start looking under the mattresses and I start rummaging through things, which to me, by the way, is the tell that there's addiction. Because once I start to do that stuff, then I know I confess, freeze the frame and know if a family comes to me and they're already doing that, either A, they're nuts or there's definitely addiction. Okay, so now you're rummaging around, you find another thing, you come home and you say to your kid, now look what I found in your room. Okay, I found another joint. Do you see this? And he says to me, you're crazy. That was from last time. I don't know what you're talking about. And again, I'm faced with, do I acknowledge that, okay, now is the problem and I call it here, but it is marijuana, but I smoked weed myself, but he's 15, but this is normal. How many other people are living through this? So there's all that going on. So again, what comes out of my mouth is, I told you I would punish you, and next time I really mean it. And he says, well, I promise it's not going to happen again. And I say, I promise next time it happens, I'm going to do it. And of course, you can go on and however long this tape plays out. And, 3 weeks later, I find it. And then I say, you lied to me. How dare you have lied to me? And now what? Now what am I going to do? So I execute a punishment that's untenable, and then I can't sustain it. And then the next time what? And I'm in this position as the parent, even more so than the spouse, where I recognize I can't really get out of this, and I can't really throw him out, even though I'm saying I'm going to, you're going to leave the home, you're going to go live with your father, I start doing all these irrational things that I myself can't sustain. And so that's how you kick the can down the,
Yep.
road.
And the same thing happens in a marriage relationship, right? It's, the next time that you get high and I'm done. Or, and next thing you know, I'm like your parent that's rummaging around. Now I'm going through cell phone bills, and now I'm going through credit card bills, and now I want to put trackers on cars, and now I want find my iPhone apps, and now I'm like, my entire being is now consumed with this chaos and craziness, and I have no life anymore. Because now my life is micromanaging another human being's life.
Right. Life 360. And I'm on my cell watching you. That's my life. That's what it's become. And the threat is, of course, and again, the position is I have like 2 babies and another one on the way, or whatever it is, or a job. And I'm not really in a position, because I haven't positioned myself to leave. Right. So I have a woman now who is living with a guy, and she says when her daughter graduates high school, which is a year and a half from now, she's going to leave him. So in the last session, we were talking about that, and I said, okay, well then fine. If a year and a half we have a runway, what are you going to do with your own life in the meantime? Are you going to go into the city? Are you going to get a job? How are you going to position yourself to make that happen, other than threaten that it's going to happen? And that's really, with you, the shift was when you got your house. I don't know if people know your story, but the reality
They
is,
will.
okay,
I mean, but I think you're right. I think it's we make these, or we give ourselves like, personally, we say to ourselves like your client does, in a year and a half when they graduate, then I'm leaving. And so we've kicked the can down the road, right? We think we set an ultimatum for the person, right? Get your stuff together in the next X amount of time, or I'm out of here, right?
So
When really,
threat.
between you and I, like, really no intention of leaving. Like, but it sounds good.
And the problem with most addiction is that it's more like intermittent reinforcement which becomes more difficult. So there are periods of time where it actually flips over again like a light switch into the good stage. And once you're flipped over into the good stage, for whatever reason you think that what I said before in the very beginning, the bad stage doesn't exist. And this is the stage now that we're going to. And what it does is it reinforces you to now double down on wanting to keep this good stage going. And then, again, it's like, oh, shocking. I found some, Coke in his room again. Oh, you just found it for the first time. I haven't done it in like 5 months. Like, you're so good that you found it this second. Oh, really? I mean, it's an amazing miracle. It's always just like the first time it's happening and you're catching it for the first time. And again, the cycle, it's not going to happen again. I've got it under control. Okay, because we were doing so well. And now look. So yes, please, let's go back to that other state. Oh, I guess it's hard. You haven't been able to go back to that state. So, let's get you to rehab. Let's do this. Let's do that. Let's try to, because we want to go back there again.
It is true, though. We live for those moments where like everything seems to be okay. And, our little guardrails that we've put up, at least for me, it was like, you have to, the Find My iPhone app didn't turn off, and that he passed a drug test that I gave him randomly. And, he was where he said he was going to be. And all of a sudden you feel like you have hope.
Picked up the phone.
He picked up the phone, right?
Answered the phone.
It didn't go to voicemail, right? I mean, there's all these crazy things, and we live for these moments of, of joy and happiness. And then when the shoe falls off again,
it's shocking.
It's shocking, right? It's like, how did this happen? I thought we were on this perfect road.
Right. That whole other side, I colluded in believing that a side didn't exist.
So I guess I'm going to ask you a question that's sort of out of my list of questions, but I don't want to believe that there's no hope, right? I want to believe that there's hope. Like, programs work, rehabs work. Mm-hmm. In your opinion, what do you need to see from a partner? What do you need, or how much time or consistent behavior, or like, when do you feel like you can go, okay, like there actually might be a shot here that this actually might be recovery?
Well, when I'm working with the person who has the addiction, first of all, I wouldn't be in the field if I didn't think there was hope. So right. I just may be like completely, wired to sustain, the codependent position of trying to fix. But, so I start from a position that there is hope, definitely. And I try to engage with the person around that possibility that there is hope. And I try to spark their own curiosity about why is it I'm doing this, and what is their own personal childhood narrative. Not just coming at it from you have a disease and that kind of thing, but more of an integrative psychological approach to it. Like, can you engage with me in the narrative of the fact that you felt abandoned as a child, and that you're using drugs and alcohol to, avoid, or whatever it is, and go to these programs and use the whatever supports, but come back for psychological counseling. And when I see that they have their own skin, however you describe that, in the game, then I start to know. Like, I have a client right now, and it's really interesting. He dropped out of college in his third year, which is, I have like 3 clients who dropped out of college in their third year. And you can always say, again, it's always like when it's about to happen and we're about to be successful, and it rolls back again.
Right.
It's part of the hook too, right? Like, when they're about to finish the halfway house and get a job, and they got the job for 2 weeks, and then it falls back again. And so, there's always that piece of the story too, like that I can't sustain the success. I don't want to really launch, but
self-sabotage.
Yeah.
Right.
Back to this guy. So he's in his third year of college and he bounces out. and his mother had to get him home, take him home, and he had a psychotic episode coupled with all the weed smoking and all that, and ended up in program after program. And in some ways, the programs themselves become traumatizing because, the family keeps him overdue in this program and actually interrupts their developmental cycle too. So now he comes bouncing back to me and we start doing therapy, and I slowly but surely begin to convince him that, not smoking the weed is the key to really sustaining, not becoming psychotic again and having that episode, in which case he could go back to school. Like, we uncouple the chain. In other words, I'm not just saying, oh, you smoked weed, So he really buys that. So what's interesting is his mom, though, is still not in a place now where she trusts him. So he's going back in December. I'm convinced he's not going to smoke, by the way. I'm to the extent you can be convinced, but I am convinced, because I think he's got it. He's figured this piece out. Not that he will never smoke ever again in his life, and I don't even say that to him. I say, let's get through these 6 months, get your degree. Anyway, he's still coming at it from that hypervigilant, how are we going to drug screen him? Are we going to, and you can see she's still in that spot herself. So even though he may be exiting, she's not. So,
and I hate to say, like, understand her.
Oh, of course.
Understand her, been her,
Yes.
am her. And I wish that, I wish that it's so funny, the addiction turns us into, parent, detective, EMT, financial safety net, nurse, all the above, like all these roles that we never wanted to be, but suddenly we become. And then the addict, either, utilizes us for that, or manipulates us with that, or gaslights us for that. So kind of like we're in this sort of no-win, right? We're in this no-win as the partner. It's like it's if we show up for them to save them, great. But if we try and put a boundary down, we're, evil.
From their perspective.
And I guess, my question, and I circle back, is, how do we sort of hold our own in this sort of mess of, I mean, look, we didn't ask to be a part of this. Like, this wasn't like my dream story, right? I didn't go like, I'm going to marry an addict and like destroy like 22 years or 23 years of my life, right? That wasn't like, I wasn't like on my college application. And I ended up being all these things and tried my best to be the EMT and the financial safety net and the nurse and the mom and the wife and all of those things. And then, at the end of 23 years, had nothing to show for it, right? Like, I still have a partner who still struggles with recovery. And, this whole thing has taken an emotional toll on my life. I've lost years off my life from this. And I guess, I don't even know if it's a question or just a statement, sort of, there are thousands of us that are out there, and for every addict, how many people it affects, like this ripple effect of everyone it affects. And yes, I can relate to the mom who's hypervigilant, like, been there, I could write an essay, or I could get a degree in like the terrible things that I have done to try to control the situation. And I kind of wanted someone to let me off the hook, because the addict wasn't going to do that, right? It worked when it worked for the addict, then it was great. When it didn't work for the addict, then, I got punished. I mean, how do you sort of, when we came to you, right? And you saw our dynamic, like, what would your guidance have been to people like me who are in that hamster wheel? Like, how do we get out?
Well, what's interesting is you're describing yourself in the moment, again, not a complete picture of self, right?
Right.
You're the person with the addict.
Right.
But you're not Samantha who had, and you were striking, and so many people off. A striking example of somebody who's very skilled. Don't forget, you get like really great skills at being the EMT, the fixer, and all that jazz.
Right.
I mean, not many people can problem solve like that
Right.
in creative ways. But
Right.
you said that, so it's not all lost in terms of skill sets, but you were a talented human being, independent of that. You just didn't focus on that. That was a striking part of you that was completely cut off. And so we have to sort of move towards that side of self to say, wait a second, there's more to you than just being in this box with him.
I mean,
However,
I think I think that I had, after so many years, that was sort of became my identity. I had
you
lost.
said just now, I had nothing to show for it.
Yeah.
That's really not true at all. Look at what you have to show for it now. Look at who you've become. Look at what you're trying to do for the world, for women, for men going through this.
I think that the whole reason for this podcast, was sort of a love letter to my life, is how it started. It was something to show for my life. And if I could help, I mean, if you had told me, 3 years ago, you'll be living on your own, I would have laughed at you. Right. If you had said you're going to file for a legal separation and hold your own on your financial boundaries, I would have laughed at you. I mean, I didn't have a boundary you couldn't push over, shove over, destroy. I mean, he said jump. I said how high? I mean, my whole self-worth was like enabled and wrangled and wrapped like a vine into this person. And if he was okay, then I was okay. And, I didn't even know what a healthy boundary looked like. I just knew that if I had one and he said, like kick it, I kicked it. And I just didn't know how to stand up on my own. Like I really, it's funny. There was a book, I think I told you about this. There was a book I read years ago called Healing the Child Within. And it said, I didn't know how I felt in the morning until I saw how my mother was feeling. And that became like the quote of my life, right? I didn't know how I felt in the morning until I saw how he was feeling. That was if I woke up in the morning and he was there, and hadn't disappeared in the middle of the night. That became my reason to live, was how, if he was good, I was good. If he was sober, I was good. If he was following the rules, I was good. And I think a lot of people in my situation are in that same, the same hamster wheel, right? Of like, as long as they're good, I'm good. But the minute, I'm talking like the minute that it falls off the rails, the house comes tumbling down like a deck of cards.
Well, it's interesting because what you start to do is attach your own mental health and emotional well-being to the person who has emotional illness and psychiatric disorder. And so you're basically saying, they're having a good day, I'm having a good day, as opposed to separating that out, which is really the goal of Al-Anon and therapy and all of that. Easier said than done, but definitely the goal.
Why does the addict respond so badly to a boundary?
A boundary that's kept.
Right. Why do they respond badly to a boundary at all? I mean, it's like you try and set one down because, it's like you come to you, right? We have this great conversation in therapy and I leave therapy and I'm like, I'm going to hold firm on my boundary or until as long as I'm guilted into no longer having it. Why does the addict...
Well, I mean, if in fact you were to really theoretically hold a boundary and, sustain your own set of healthiness, then you would be basically saying on some level, I'm no longer going to tolerate this behavior.
Oh, there we go.
So then that would be really the shift. So as long as I could keep pulling you into the circus, into another ring, then I don't have to, nothing changes if nothing changes.
Nothing changes.
So, that's why I was saying to that wife in the 1.5-year trajectory, the bigger thing she could do instead of saying to him in 1.5 years, I'm going to leave you, would be to pick herself up, go back to school, get a job, because that would speak volumes to him. That would actually be bigger than making some sort of false boundary statement.
How can partners like me stop feeling responsible for the addict's actions and relapses and lies? How do we stop feeling like we're a part, like, the addict loves to throw in our faces. I mean, a lot of people have heard this, right? Like, I got high because of you. You
Well,
did this, I got high. You didn't do this, I got high. If
right.
you had done this, I wouldn't have gotten high. How do
You
we
said the
let
right word in the right order, then it would have all worked out.
exactly?
Right. And you didn't. So, well, I mean, you should really, I suppose, and again, these are easier things said
Of
than done,
course.
of course, but the reality is, you probably did say the wrong thing in the wrong order. And you still are responsible for getting high. That doesn't mean that it's correlation, as they say.
Right,
It's
as
not
they say.
causation, right? You still are your own human being because the other thing suggests, again, in the twisted view of it, oh, well, if I just say the right thing in the right manner, then, this isn't going to happen. And so therefore, all of the onus of the addiction still falls upon me. And if I could control myself, then I can control you. And, you got to sort of step out of that side of the story. Though, having said that, I do think that probably practicing being kinder and not putting yourself in the position of saying, I don't know if you can curse on here, but
Right.
leaves you feeling bad. You're setting yourself up into a bad position when you do that.
I guess as we're sort of wrapping up for today, a couple of last questions. Why is it, do you think, that people, it's really easy for people to say, just leave. Just pack up your stuff and go. Like, you know what? This isn't working. They've treated you badly. They're in their addiction. It's craziness. You're living in chaos. Just leave. You hear it from families. You hear it from parents to their children, from siblings to their siblings. Like, just get out.
Right.
Why do you think it's so hard for those of us in this situation to just leave?
It's a great question. I don't even start with that point from when I'm dealing with parents, actually, because I know, I mean, in all the years I've been doing this, how many parents have ever really thrown their kids out? It's
Right.
not even a possibility. So that's a different position than in the partner position, where there is the option to leave. But in the option to leave, again, is the process of moving yourself out. It's not just, oh, just leave. It's, what do I need? First of all, am I at the place where I sort of no longer can take this anymore? Then do I find a house where I can go to myself? Am I still thinking I'm taking you to a house? Oh, I'm taking you to the house, but now you act out again, and I'm starting to say, no. There's a part of me that starts to say, I don't want you in this house. And so again, it's not just like, oh, leave.
Leave.
It's, I have to get myself to a place where I'm allowing myself to exist. And again, does that mean I have to get a job? What does that really mean that I have to concretely do for myself? Of course, I mean, in the event that you're being really physically and harmfully abused, I should say that, then of course you want to get out. Then there is, you have to get out. But staying out is still the issue, right?
Right.
Which goes back to trauma bonding and all that other stuff.
And I'm going to wrap it up with this. We've had a lot of guests on that are here to share their stories
Yes.
and from their own perspectives, right? And I guess I wanted you to share how important it is to allow them a place, to talk. Why it's so important for those of us on my side of the fence. You and I've talked about this and why I started this, that the addict has so many resources. They've got podcasts and meetings and rehab and therapists and books, and there's a million things. And for us, there's, another 12-step program. And then there's really nothing, right? There's a couple of Facebook groups. And I just kind of wanted you to share why it's so important for people who come on this, or people and not even just here, but people in the real world. Why, as a support system to people like us, why it's so important just to listen.
Well, just to have, validation that I'm not the only person in the universe that's, going through this, because don't forget, it's done very much in private. Like if you have a persona outside, like you even had, that makes it even more complicated, right? I'm an acknowledged professional human being over here. God forbid other people really know what I'm
What's
going
going on?
through.
Right.
So, to be able to break through that barrier, or at least hear somebody else share their story and know that you're not alone in it. There was this old 1950s movie called If You Love Me. It was great. I mean, it was corny, but it was great. And it shows this woman who is living with somebody who's sneaking in the basement drinking, saying he's working on the birdhouse. And she runs into her friends in the supermarket and they say, "Hey, Marge, how's it going?" And she, "Oh, things are good." And then she goes home to this. And as the movie unfolds, you see her wearing dark sunglasses and, they say, "Hey, Marge, how you doing?" One of them presumptively is an Al-Anon, and she's like avoiding, seeing anybody. And the final scene, that moment of getting it seen, was she was on the stairs with her husband and he was drinking, and she starts like losing it and screaming and like, "Oh," and he says, "Look at yourself. Do you see how crazy you are?" And in that moment, she starts to see herself. So I think in the moment, which is the beginning, of course, of getting help. So I think what you're saying on some level is just coming on and sharing and hearing your own self tell this story, not from what he did and she did and da da da, but what I did and how I'm living through this. And wow, where have I gone? Is the moment of, again, saying, I need to get help. And I think that's what you're offering by this program, is the idea that, yes, I don't have to live like this anymore. Whether I stay or go, by the way, I don't have to be this person who's turned into Marge with the sunglasses, avoiding and hiding, even if the world thinks I'm competent on the outside.
I love you.
Yeah.
You saved my life and you've saved so many people's lives, and I can't wait to have you back.
Well, thank you for having me. I
I,
feel honored for that.
I, I'm honored that the universe brought you into my life, and I am where I'm at today because of you.
Well, and the universe brought you into my life, and I'm here today because of you. So, thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Audrey.
All right.
I really appreciate it.
Lies, relapses, late night calls, therapist detox, emotional brawls. I've lived through chaos, tears, and gaslighting blame, and now I've turned it into a podcast game.